If you think the market had a bad reaction to the prospects of new lockdowns and an economic slowdown, sending some stocks to crash over the past few days, you probably have no idea of the chaos that has been installed across global supply chains. For several months, conditions have significantly worsened. But many were expecting disruptions to calm down and operations to come back to normal after the winter. That hope has been successfully crushed by the emergence of a new virus strain with an alarming number of mutations. Asian countries, the world's biggest exporters and our key trade partners, have already started to impose new work restrictions, port shutdowns, and factory closures to prevent this new variant from spreading. Some industry executives argue that we're about to see a repeat of 2020, when mandatory shutdowns disrupted manufacturing and shipping and led to shortages on a scale we haven't seen in almost a century. Just as economies started to reopen, they might have to close everything down again. Only this time, we will be locked at home, already knowing that there are fewer products available for consumption and that we're facing a painful inflation rate that's likely to cause even more pain as problems intensify over the coming months. Not a very reassuring outlook, that's for sure. If supply chains were struggling with worker shortages before, it is safe to say that these issues will not get any better in the foreseeable future. Right now, hundreds of cargo ships remain stuck offshore, waited to be unloaded. While increasingly more store shelves get empty, prices skyrocket, and shipping companies are warning about further delivery delays. The 2021 holiday season is looking gloomier than usual. Higher prices impacted this year's Thanksgiving table, and fewer discounts had a toll on retailers' sales this Black Friday. Things are not expected to improve by Christmas. In fact, retailers are openly warning people they will face shortages and products will be far more expensive as shipping and supply chain problems compound. The health crisis is likely to revive some logistics nightmares many had thought to be a problem from the past. Due to the increased health crisis, millions of supply chain workers will probably choose not to return to what they consider to be risky or low-paying jobs. The whole system is falling apart, according to urban plant growers owner Peter Cole. 2 months after it was due to arrive, his company's $1.6 million order was just being loaded into 2 40-foot shipping containers aboard a ship that set sail from Shenzhen, China, and is still floating somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. He says it never used to be this way. In the before times, his products used to be manufactured, shipped, and ready to sell to his customers in a little over 6 weeks. Then, everything broke down. Cole's company, of course, is not alone. Millions of small and medium-sized businesses in the United States are still struggling to restock shelves and keep warehouses full as they brace for more potential supply chain bottlenecks caused by extreme weather this winter, and now new disruptions caused by a new wave of virus cases. Delivery delays have been a persistent problem throughout the health crisis, with government restrictions at border crossings slowing or completely interrupting the flow of raw materials and finished products, such as lumber and electronics. Now, China's 7-week port closure mandate is only making everything worse. The country's increasingly extreme health policies are standing in the way of a full recovery for the shipping industry and extending a crisis that is congesting ports all around the world. According to Bloomberg, in one of its latest attempts to keep the virus out, China is imposing 7-week mandatory isolation from arriving seafarers, prohibiting crew changes, and suspending port operations during the confinement period. Even vessels that have refreshed their crew elsewhere have to wait 2 weeks before they're allowed to port in China. To comply, ship owners and managers have had to reroute ships, delaying shipments and crew changes, adding to the supply chain crisis, Bloomberg reports. China's restrictions caused knock-on effects, explained Guy Platten, the Secretary General of the International Chamber of Shipping, which represents ship owners and operators. Any restrictions to ship operations have an accumulative impact on the supply chain and cause real disruptions. The country is not only the biggest exporter on the entire planet, but a key hub for the shipping industry. But it is also one of the nations with the most radical measures to contain the virus. For instance, last week, a Beijing school held primary school children overnight after one teacher tested positive. Their current definition of close contact now extends to people separated by as far as a mile. China's factories were already being plagued by an energy crisis that is causing extensive power shortages and slowing output, just as consumer demand reached all-time highs. The new restrictions will have a ripple effect all over the world, but here in America, where ports are extremely congested, loaded vessels are still piling up, and shortages are showing no signs of easing. This means companies and industries that rely on exports will have major troubles in the months ahead, and the economy will be hard hit by the combination of lower sales volume and a collapsing supply chain system. Operations that used to run smoothly for decades have now been broken. Any one of the issues that led to this would have caused problems, says Enda Breslin of ShipBob, a global fulfillment firm. But all of them put together have caused these massive issues we're hearing about right now. The repercussions are enormous, from soaring prices for Christmas presents to timid Black Friday bargains, empty supermarket shelves, non-existent car sales, and a never-ending frenzy for shipping containers whose prices escalated 500% in one single year. But the problems knocking the supply chain out of balance in recent months hasn't been as scary as the potential of widespread port shutdowns during a time of enhanced consumer demand. In fact, economists are saying that if we fall into another virus-induced recession and governments issue another round of stimulus checks to consumers, supply chain snarls may linger for years. At this point, it is known that one of the biggest issues that led to this crisis was the mismatch between supply and demand. We had governments all over the world stimulating consumption in the face of the health crisis. Mark Levinson, author of 2 books on shipping containers, highlighted in a recent interview. Levinson mentions that one of the roots of this crisis is politics. Only in the United States, stimulus checks sent directly to citizens resulted in a 4.2% month-on-month increase in consumer spending in March 2021. The government also encouraged the public to spend more money online, which required a rapid readjustment in the way of conducting business. For decades, the retail industry's reliance on shipping has been stable. Retail used to go up by 2% every year. Retailers would release 2 catalogs of new products every 12 months, which used to allow stores to buy their stock in advance. E-commerce made it possible for consumers to buy products that haven't even been manufactured yet, which of course is overwhelming production worldwide. Even though a spike in consumer demand would normally be considered good news, these are definitely not normal times. Given that industries across the globe have been struggling with shortages of labor, energy, raw materials, and surging transport costs, the emergence of a new variant is going to collapse production even further and make it harder for companies to keep up with the growing consumer demand. Several companies are already on the edge. Although shoppers are ordering more, the cost to attend to the demand is almost bankrupting many businesses, and in many cases, given that increased costs for companies are translated into higher prices for consumers, after these businesses finally have inventory on hand, sales can be quite disappointing. For example, Cole from Urban Plant Growers said that he expected skyrocketing sales this holiday season, but he is still far away from that goal now, and he doesn't know if goods will make it to his stores in time for the Christmas period. He says it's gonna severely damage our sales and company. We can't sell anything if we don't have it. Much of the items his company needed were manufactured incorrectly, which his suppliers blamed on the rationing of power in China. Then, just as many other business owners, Cole couldn't find a cargo ship to fulfill the order. He believed his two 40-foot shipping containers were going to be loaded onto a vessel near Shenzhen on November 13th, but the items didn't make it to sea until November the 20th. It takes almost a month for ships to cross the ocean, and waiting times at ports mean there's no guarantee his goods will be delivered this year. He says usually it's a 2-day turnaround to get stuff from the port to the warehouse, but I have absolutely no confidence. It's a major headache for everyone, he noted. People have lost sales because they didn't have enough stock to sell. No CEO of a large retailer or brand is ever gonna want to be in that position again. Some of the smaller companies, I think, are gonna struggle more because the capacity issues are still there, and I think they're gonna be there for a while. There are the ones that we have squeezed out both in prices and in availability, added Dr. Carlos Mina, a supply chain management professor with Portland State University. One industry insider recently revealed what his company has been experiencing and warned that consumers should be careful when placing orders, saying the supply chain bottlenecks are real, and I think what customers need to be careful about when they're shopping on websites is to understand when the product will be delivered. At our company, we don't list any product on our site that isn't in a warehouse in the United States ready to ship when the order is placed. But not all websites are like that. So I think it's very important that customers be really attuned to whether it's in a warehouse ready to ship, said Overstock.com CEO Jonathan Johnson. Johnson also sounded the alarm on the effects the new variant will have on supply chains. There's no question we keep an eye on the Omicron variant. We've watched new variants, we've watched where there's been an outbreak, and we've helped our suppliers move their manufacturing first from China, then to Vietnam. When Vietnam got bottlenecked up, some moved to the US and South America. We're watching where these variants have outbreaks and what their impact is. Heaven forbid they become like the first one was and shut us down, he continued. Unfortunately, new research has shown that some confirmed cases of the new virus strain that were registered in Europe did not come from South Africa, where the variant was originally spotted. That means the new outbreak is already global, and it's only a matter of time until it hits America and leads to a new round of lockdowns, work restrictions, travel bans, port shutdowns, and factory closures. Last week, a new Bank of America report on this year's Q3 earnings outlined that supply chain shortages were up 412% year-on-year, and with more and more disruptions emerging, the situation is expected to get much worse than previously thought. If you think shortages are bad right now, over the next few weeks, this crisis is bound to hit extremely concerning levels. Sadly, those who have not listened to experts warning us that this would happen are gonna be terribly unprepared for the challenges that lie ahead. Exceedingly painful times are coming for us. We've effectively reached a point where there is no return to normal anymore.